My thesis. Aditi's thesis is valid because although single stories hold truth, they do not fully reveal the importance behind other elements that define a place or a person. Believing in a single story is the source of unfair judgments and misconceptions. Argument 1. Will is a victim of stereotypes, however, he rises above his single story. Will from Good Will Hunting is an example of a character who struggles with stereotypes. The clothes Will wears, the trouble he gets himself into, where he lives, the friends he surrounds himself with, and the job he has makes others perceive him as a member of the lower class in society. With that comes instantaneous judgments wherever he goes. Despite his appearance, there's a lot more to Will than the surface reveals. Although all this is true, Will's story does not stop at poverty. He's also a genius. In the bar scene at the beginning of the film, Will and his friends walk into the bar where Harvard students immediately judge him before knowing anything about him. One student says, "You'll be serving my kids fries at a drive-thru one day." Expecting nothing more from Will than the path of a typical poor boy is similar to how Chimamanda's roommate first thought of her. But what if the Harvard students knew that Will was poor and a genius? Because of the negative stereotypes like the ones in Africa, the Harvard students thought that there was no possibility of a connection as human equals. This idea even carries on through Will's relationship with Skylar. Completing the story of every person is crucial to understanding who they really are. Argument 2. Single stories don't include all important aspects, which lead to misconceptions and differences. Hamlet is an extremely complex character who is faced with many internal struggles that no one is aware of, evident in his to-be or not-to-be speech and his other soliloquies. Ophelia's father, Polonius, is an example of someone who fell for the single story of Hamlet. Because of Hamlet's single story, his family's relationship with him is broken down since their differences become more evident than their similarities. Polonius is convinced that Hamlet has gone mad due to his immense love for Ophelia. However, he is not aware about the other aspects of Hamlet's life that justify his madness. Struggling with the death of his father and the betrayal of his mother is really what is causing Hamlet to act erratically. Because no one knows the truth behind Hamlet's actions, he is in a constant battle with his own mind and his family. Adichie states that single stories emphasize how we are different rather than how we are similar. It is important to understand what each person is experiencing before assuming and making misconceptions about them. Argument 3. Okonkwo is stripped of his dignity due to the forces of power. The book Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe was written so that African experiences would not be mistold. This alone supports how Africans were constantly overlooked by white colonial writers. Their version of the African stories was represented by the character Mr. Smith in the novel, who saw no purpose in maintaining the African heritage. Unlike Mr. Brown's accepting and open-minded personality, Mr. Smith sees things as black and white, and black is evil. He expected Okonkwo, along with all the others, to reject their indigenous beliefs. He had a single story of their culture and believed his ways to be superior. Achebe wrote the book to fairly criticize and retell both sides to the story. In the story, Okonkwo was once a well-respected man, a successful farmer, and a fierce warrior. He had built his life in order to gain the titles he was acknowledged by. However, after exile, a different power had taken over. The Igbo culture had been challenged. Single stories make a recognition of equal humanity difficult, which is exactly what occurred for both Okonkwo and the commissioners. Unable to adapt to the new ways, Okonkwo was stripped of his dignity. Despite all he had accomplished in his past to build his reputation, this was quickly taken away with how power perceived his culture to be and how everyone followed. As a continuously evolving society, it is crucial to explore all stories while rejecting the single story in order to avoid any assumptions, stereotypes, and misconceptions that may lead to devastating consequences.